I'm sorry, everyone, but the bombing of children and hospitals will end under Biden. Joe Biden outlines plan for Israel-Hamas ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, according to him. It's time for this war to end. I can't really do a good... It's time for this war to end, Jack. Let's hope so. I believe in Biden. He's been doing a really good job so far. Really, the biggest criticism I think anyone on the left could have for him is his handling of Israel and Gaza. And despite the fact that he has handled it better than any president before, like more critically of Israel than any other president, and by a lot, it's still not by much. And the majority of left-leaning Americans would like much more harsh criticism, at least of Israel, when they're actively doing what most would agree is a genocide. There's arguments and nitpicking, especially by Zionists, about whether what's happening qualifies as a genocide. For me and most people on the left, it's effectively no different. Who cares? But there are people who get crazy about that. Regardless, it's mass killing. Like, these events are going to be referred to as, like, massacres individually when you look them up on Wikipedia in, like, 4 years. Like, you're going to see, like, the massacre of the Rafah border crossing. That's going to be a thing. There are civilians, children, women, and, like, old people who are the victims here a lot of the time. It's a big problem. And the victims here are oftentimes not the people that are actually being targeted, because the people being targeted, the actual military, Hamas's military, use civilians as human shields. So there will continue to be deaths of innocent civilians until the fighting stops. The fighting just has to stop at this point. If Hamas is going to be fought, it has to be through completely different means, because continuing to just attack Hamas is going to mean the hostages are going to die, people are going to continue to die, innocent civilians are going to continue to die, and according to Israel, they say they aren't trying to commit a genocide. So if they agree to do this, then that's a pretty good way to prove that, if they're willing to just stop and come up with a different way to fight their military enemy that doesn't involve potentially wiping out an entire city of people. Anyway, so yeah, this is a pretty big Biden W. Probably the biggest weak point for Biden. Not to mention, if this goes through, for those that don't know, I forget who mentioned it in chat, but it is true. If this goes through, Biden will have, in his career, been responsible for 10 peace deals. Which I think is, like, really high for any politician, like, in American history, to be responsible for. If Biden succeeds at this, he will have been responsible for 10 peace deals in his political career, which is a really frustrating thing when you consider that so many lefties, like, talk about Biden like he's some hyper war hawk. Arguably, like, he's more of a war hawk than Trump or the Republicans, when if you know his history and, like, do your research, you know that he's actually, like, impressively well resumed in regards to, like, peace negotiations. The only two higher peace deals was after World War I and II. So, like, in modern American history, he is the guy who holds the record for the most peace deals he's responsible for. Yeah, it's just so frustrating that this kind of stuff is news to people. It's like, Biden is astonishingly progressive for somebody who actually managed to get into the Oval Office. When you actually think about it. Astonishingly progressive for a guy who actually won.
We're coming on the air a little bit earlier this afternoon because President Biden is about to come before the cameras for the first time since former President Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts of filing false business documents here in New York. President Biden is actually expected to speak about to the nation about Israel's war with Hamas, urging Hamas to accept the hostage deal that has been put on the table in recent days. This would be a critical step before any possible peace plan to try to end the conflict in Gaza, which is about to enter its 8th month. I should mention, we don't know if the president will address the 34 felony guilty verdicts in the last 24 hours. We know he will address what you're looking at now. Israel's intensified operation inside the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The Israeli military today saying its forces have advanced into central Rafah despite global backlash and calls to scale back the assault there. Just this week, an Israeli official suggesting this war in Gaza could go until at least the end of the year, another 7 months. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly said the war will...
Well, I mean, that would literally mean there'd be nothing left if that happens. So, yeah, Biden needs to put a stop to this ASAP.
...will continue, he says, until Hamas is destroyed. Hostage talks between Israel and Hamas broke off about 3 weeks ago. It's believed more than 100 hostages are...
Who thinks that Hamas will stop grabbing human shields? Like, they will literally start digging through the rubble to find every injured child that's been, like, had a house collapse on them by the IDF bombings and use them as a human shield for, like, the last volley of small munition strikes. Like, they'll just, like, continue to search for people to gather together and use as human shields so there's no one left. If you're going to wipe out Hamas, you have to wipe out every last Palestinian in Gaza, because every last Palestinian in Gaza will be rounded up and used as human shields by Hamas. And then they'll use the hostages. They'll use the Israeli hostages too. Yeah, so at a certain point, and I'm sure this has already happened. I don't know if we have confirmation of it, though it's very likely that there's already like a story that's confirmed this has happened already. That I just don't know about. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the IDF has already been responsible for the accidental killing of their own hostages, at least like 1 or 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, if there's no evidence of that, but I mean, shit. Gaza's not that big, and they've been bombing a lot of it. Where the fuck could they be keeping all the hostages if they're safe from that? Like, it seems like you're basically asking for strays to hit friendlies there. You know, I've played Helldivers too. I know how that shit goes. It's hard to not airstrike your friends. They did. I think there's evidence. Yeah. Listen, I played Helldivers too. I know that it's quite difficult to not airstrike your friends. It's not a very precise way of doing battle, you know?
Still being held in Gaza. You're looking at the state dining room there, obviously at the White House. The president expected to speak shortly to the nation about increasing the pressure on Hamas to accept this deal for a ceasefire to try to get these hostages out. As I mentioned, that number, and it bears repeating, at least 100 hostages, it's believed, are still being held inside Gaza. Now, again, what's...
I've heard this weird narrative that there's like 5 hostages left that that Hamas took. No, there's like a bit over 100 at least that are still alive and still in custody at the current estimation. So there's definitely like a case to be made like, yeah, I mean, these negotiations should include the release of those hostages, which makes sense, right? Like, why did they take the hostages? For leverage. Clearly, Hamas wants something, and they took hostages to use as leverage. And if Israel's willing to play ball and maybe negotiate, then obviously those hostages exist as hostages simply for the purpose of being used as leverage in that potential deal. I mean, that's why you take hostages, isn't it? Like, are they just doing that for fun?
Unclear as whether or not President Biden will address directly the major headline here at home, which is the first criminal conviction of a former president in history. Donald Trump found guilty on those 34 felony counts yesterday afternoon in a New York City courtroom. The former president reacting yesterday.
Pokemon, go to the jail.
And then again today in front of the cameras, calling the trial rigged, saying he will fight on. He said the verdict will come this November when Americans go to the polls. Mary Bruce, you're watching this live camera too as we await the president. Unclear if he'll address the news here at home.
And David, the president, we know, has gone really out of his way to actually stay silent on this trial over the last several weeks. He has been silent since we found out about that guilty verdict yesterday afternoon. But his campaign has really struck a very somber...
Dude, I love the clip that chuds are coping about, saying, look how, is Biden's brain melting? He can't even respond to anything. Is the response to the video where a reporter asked Biden, how do you respond to Trump supporters saying that, or to supporters of Trump saying that you're using the political system or the legal system to attack him with these trials? And Biden just turns and goes and walks away. And like chuds are like posting that clip like his brain is melted. He can't even respond. And it's like he just did like an evil smile at the camera at that question and then walked away. He's fucking with you. Like, they can't accept it because the left can't meme, guys. The left just can't meme. It's not possible. They can't consider that possibility. Let me see if I can find it. I wonder if I can find this clip on YouTube. It's funny. Nope, probably not. Yep, here it is. I found it. Found it on C-SPAN. People were posting this clip, Trump supporters were, and trying to copium claim that this is an example of Biden's brain melting.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
Should he be on the ballot, sir?
He just looks at the camera with that smirk. That fucking smirk. And then walks the fuck away. Like, he's like, well, maybe no, I'm gonna leave him with that. I'm gonna leave him with that. And he just continues onward. The copium about that clip is crazy. It's crazy. They can't accept that Biden has a sense of humor. They can't do it. They can't do it.
Somewhat muted tone. They are trying not to be too celebratory about this. They don't want to feed into the narrative, which Donald Trump repeated today, the baseless narrative that this was all somehow a political hit job orchestrated by the president. His campaign, though, has said that what we saw yesterday, this verdict, makes clear that no one is above the law. And while clearly the president politically will want to take advantage of this verdict, he is now running against a convicted felon. His campaign, I am told, wants to stay laser focused on outlining the stakes in this election. It remains to be seen, though, just how much the president's going to lean in to this conviction. It's why, if he does choose to address it here, and here comes the president, David.
Oh.
Just checking this afternoon. Good afternoon. Before I begin my remarks,
that's me as fuck.
Say a few words.
That's actually the most me thing ever. Like, when I'm approaching somebody on the sidewalk, whenever I'm like walking to the dispensary, like, or to the store, just anywhere, right? Like when I'm just going on a walk and I pass somebody, I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. Oh yeah, good morning, good morning. Oh wait, is it afternoon? Oh, it's like noon. I don't know. What would I guess either will work. Usually if it's like the sun's around the middle of the sky, I just take a gamble. And usually people don't bat an eye, but yeah, that's me as fuck. Like, oh, what time is it? Can I say good morning or good afternoon?
About what happened yesterday in New York City.
Yeah, dude, you know what got me saying howdy to a lot of people? Red Dead Redemption 2. Because of Red Dead Redemption 2, I say hello, good afternoon, howdy ma'am, or howdy sir, like to people like I'm gaining honor points every time. Like, I farm those honor points from every greeting when I pass people on the sidewalk. I got trained to do that by Red Dead Redemption 2, which, you know what? Good for me. Good for me. RDR2 trains you to be social and friendly by giving you good honor for just greeting people politely as you walk along. And I think that's a good thing to encourage in gamers. We need more of that.
City. The American principle that no one is above the law was reaffirmed. Donald Trump was given every opportunity to defend himself. It was a state case, not a federal case. and was heard by a jury of 12 citizens.
Oh, by the way, small update on the Trump voting thing, by the way. Unfortunately, despite Trump being a Floridian, the way the rules work, from what I understand, because it was a state thing, is that despite being a felon, the felony rule applies in New York, not in Florida, I guess. So he's allowed to vote still, at least in New York. He can vote. So he just has to go to New York to vote. He can still vote as a felon because New York lets felons vote, which is good. Like, I don't think felons shouldn't be allowed to vote, but obviously it means, you know, Trump gets to vote still.
12 Americans, 12 people like you, like millions of Americans who served on juries. This jury is chosen the same way every jury in America is chosen. It was a process that Donald Trump's attorney was part of. The jury heard 5.
The issue is Trump owns property in New York, so I think that gives him the ability to vote there, if I understand the rules right. I read a whole thing today. It was from CNN, and it explained why Trump could still vote. It just has to be in New York, is what I understand, because they're state charges. The felony is from the state of New York, and New York has rules that let felons vote. So he can vote in New York, but I don't know if he can in Florida, because he just is a felon now, and felons, I don't think, can vote at all in the state of Florida. Like, they're just not allowed to get to the booths, you know?
5 weeks of evidence, 5 weeks. And after careful deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. They found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict. Our justice system has endured for nearly 250 years. And it literally is the corner.
Trump finally won a popular vote. Now, I do like his speech about this, but I want to see the speech about the Gaza thing.
Carrying aid into Gaza.
Yeah, here we go.
Now, after intensive diplomacy, the war in Gaza, that's America.
All right.
That's who we are. And that's who we'll always be, God willing. Now to another issue. I want to give an update on my efforts to end the crisis in Gaza. For the past several months, my negotiators of foreign policy, intelligence community, and like have been relentlessly focused, not just on a ceasefire that would inevitably be fragile and temporary, but on a durable end of the war. That's been the focus, a durable end of this war. One that brings all the hostages home, ensures Israel's security, creates a better day after in Gaza without Hamas in power, and sets the stage for a political settlement that provides a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Now, after intensive diplomacy carried out by my team, my many conversations with leaders of Israel, Qatar, and Egypt, and other Middle Eastern countries.
Dude, I'm always confused when people pronounce Qatar, Qatar. How are you supposed to pronounce Qatar? I always assume it's supposed to be pronounced Qatar. Like, Qatar. But then I hear it pronounced Qatar, and it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like, it just sounds like a boomer Southern white person way to mispronounce something. Qatar. I bet that became a habit a long time ago. Yeah, it's like Vietnam, you know?
Israel has offered a comprehensive new proposal. It's a roadmap to an enduring ceasefire and the release of all hostages. This proposal has been transmitted by Qatar to Hamas. Today, I want to lay out its terms for the American citizens and for the world. This new proposal has 3 phases. The first phase would last for 6 weeks. Here's what it would include.
Okay.
A full and complete ceasefire. withdrawal
that.
of Israeli forces.
You guys remember when, like, the narrative was Biden won't even say ceasefire because, like, they're so afraid of not doing war or whatever? And it was, like, the entire time Biden was, like, saying ceasefire, like, 12 times a day or something in reference to, like, talking about his plans to organize peace. And he's been, like, he's proposed, like, what, 20, 30 peace agreements at this point? And this is one that, like, this is the strongest one that we've had so far that, like, meets the terms of Israel and Hamas and involves the release of the hostages and a permanent end of conflict. Hopefully. Obviously, this is not going to last forever, but, like, even if for a week we can make bombs stop falling on kids, I'm happy, okay? Like every moment that bombs are not falling on kids is a W.
From all populated areas of Gaza, release of a number of hostages, including women, the elderly, the wounded, in exchange for release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. There are American hostages who would be released at this stage, and we want them home. Additional.
And then on the other end, part of this agreement is that Israel will release a ton of people that have been detained because they're suspected of having Hamas connections and petty crime and stuff like that. There's just a lot of people that Israel has who, like, just a lot of Palestinian people that Israel has that don't need to be locked up. They've got prisons and jails where they've got, like, bad people and actual terrorists locked up, and that's fine. But the people who should be released many of them will be released with this agreement.
Remains of hostages who have been killed would be returned to their families, bringing some degree of closure to that terrible grief. Palestinians, civilians would return to their homes and neighborhoods in all areas of Gaza, including in the north.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You should probably get to the reconstruction part of this. To be fair, I'm slightly spoiled on this because I'm aware of, like, some of the parts of this plan. Part of this also involves a Gaza reconstruction plan. So yes, there will be money put into rebuilding Gaza physically, infrastructurally. But, like, you can't put we need to, like, get them back to their homes part before we need to rebuild their homes part, you know?
Humanitarian assistance would surge, with 600 trucks carrying aid into Gaza every single day.
I like that. With
the ceasefire, that aid could be safely and effectively distributed to all who need it.
And I assume would be U.S. trucks of aid. So if Israel, like, bombs it out of nowhere and breaks the ceasefire, that would mean a U.S. soldier or at least U.S. equipment would get damaged. And that would be a big problem. So hopefully that would help to enforce a state of general peace. Even a high-tension peace is a peace nonetheless.
Of thousands of temporary shelters, including housing units, would be delivered by the international community. All that and more would begin immediately. Immediately.
This is the real test to see if Hamas gives any shits about the Palestinian people. What I really hope is that we should, like, have flyers getting airdropped into, like, Gaza, like, with the most commonly spoken language. I don't know what the most commonly spoken language is. It's probably very multilingual there, if I were to take a wild guess. So whatever's the most common. Just basically explaining what the current state is. That the President of the United States has made this deal, or presented this deal. It'd just be Arabic, okay. Would make this deal with the leaders of Hamas and with the leaders of Israel. And that if Hamas does not agree to this ceasefire, these are the things that they are deciding that you, the people, don't deserve. I unironically think one of the best things that the U.S. and Israel could do if they want to, like, fight against Hamas would be to start building up as much resentment for Hamas as possible among the Palestinian people in Gaza. Like, to the point where the Palestinian people are mobbing up and attacking Hamas in the streets. If that happens, then I think it's a pretty hard case to make for Israel that there needs to be bombings. And that would be good, just objectively. It would either be Arabic or sometimes Farsi. Okay. But yeah, I like we used to do like flyer bombings back in the day where it's not really bombs. You just drop flyers on top of a population. We should do that. And it's just basically a brief explanation of the situation. Just like, hey, if this ceasefire doesn't go through because the leaders of Hamas decide to continue hostilities and they don't agree to the ceasefire, like, and Israel's on board, we're on board, then you know who the problem is. It's in your hands now. What are these pamphlets for? Why we're bombing you? What are these pamphlets for? They're why we're... I don't... No. Okay. I think you had a moment where you weren't paying attention, Mr. Inedible. I think Hamas said they agreed to the terms already. That could change, though. We've had a couple of situations where it was thought that, like, hostilities are going to end, and Hamas has restarted hostilities unexpectedly, and there's been times where Israel has been responsible. So it's really hard to say who could be the one that casts the first stone again if peace is established.
During the 6 weeks of phase one, Israel and Hamas would negotiate the necessary arrangements to get to phase two, which is a permanent end to hostilities. Now, I'll be straight with you. There are a number of details to negotiate to move from phase one to phase two. Israel will want to make sure its interests are protected.
How do we know that this won't happen again? It's the first agreement that's given Hamas and Israel basically exactly what they want in the agreement. Like, it is the closest to both of them getting exactly what they want with the snap of fingers, I guess. To be, like, I know that for a lot of you guys, you probably can't not look at what Israel's doing as anything other than, like, they're just bombing until no one's left because they want to do a genocide. But to be clear, there has been a pretty clear evidentiary line of process since the initial attacks by Hamas on October 7th. So, presumably, if this does not get agreed to by Israel, their ability to claim a valid military cause in everything they've done, even with all the civilian death, completely evaporates, because everything that they have claimed they are doing this for will have been denied when offered to them for a peaceful solution. And at that point, if you're not willing to pursue a peaceful option, the international community is just going to be forced into dropping you insofar as support. Unfortunately, Israel, for many nations, has still maintained a faux veneer of reasonability and of, like, justification in their actions, as if it was just a sort of unfortunate list of military action that, has caused more civilian casualties than is ideal.
But the proposal says if the negotiations take longer than 6 weeks for phase one, the ceasefire will still continue as long as negotiations continue. In the United States, Egypt, and Qatar would work to ensure negotiations keep going. All agreements, until all the agreements are reached and phase two is able to begin. Then phase two would be an exchange for the release of all remaining living hostages, including male soldiers. Israeli forces would withdraw from Gaza. And as long as Hamas lives up to its commitments, a temporary ceasefire would become, in the words of the Israeli proposal, the cessation of hostilities permanently. End of quote. Cessation of hostilities permanently.
So Hamas has agreed. Israel is the one that said cessation of hostilities permanently. It's the most promising, like, peace deal that we've had, like, possibly ever.
Finally, in phase three, a major reconstruction plan for Gaza would commence, and any final remains of hostages who've been killed would be returned to their families. That's the offer that's now on the table, and what we've been asking for. It's what we need. The people of Israel should know they can make this offer without any further risk to their own security because they've devastated Hamas forces over the past 8 months. At this point, Hamas no longer is capable carrying out another October 7th is one of Israel's main objectives in this war, and quite frankly, a righteous one.
People are going to get mad about that because, like, any talk about Israel being justified in fighting Hamas is going to be, like, it's going to be juxtaposed with the deaths of children. After Vosh saw that, he drew up this ceasefire proposal from a secret Israeli deal. He finally admitted Biden is good on Israel. I actually saw that clip, and it was definitely still a little snarky. Honestly, maybe I'll organize, like, I don't know if it'll be a debate or a convo with Vosh on stream where it's like, here are the things that Biden has been doing that I feel haven't gotten enough attention. Because, like, I don't even know if he's talked about, like, Biden's climate plan, like axing 80% of our carbon footprint by going after the coal industry alone. That's just, like, one single thing he did. If he'd let anyone debate him, it's you? Yeah, probably. I really want to hear that. That would be fun. I'd have to do probably a night of research before that, for sure. Just gathering up as many stories as I can, as many bills and successes on Biden's part as I can. Because it's really just a matter of being like, look at all the things Biden has done. Like, 90% of this shit probably surprises you that it even happened, you know? Like, that's... I think a lot of it is, like, the filter that a lot of people get their news from. And I feel like right now, if you're left-leaning, chances are a lot of your news is filtered through, like, a very... It's not that you're getting nothing but negative Biden coverage. It's that when Biden does positive things, it's far more likely to be overshadowed by a different headline. So it's easy to just fall behind on just how much Biden has been doing. I saw a quote. It was bizarre. It was like, Biden's always tweeting, I don't know who this president guy is, but I'd like to have a talk with him. It's like, I follow Biden on Twitter. Usually it's like, we need to do so-and-so, and then it's followed up immediately by a bill getting passed or written up by him that acknowledges that issue. Like, when Biden does those tweets where he's like, insert thing as a problem, it's usually, like, what's going to follow that is him doing something about it, right? Like, I don't know. It's just, man... Like, Biden gets it rough. You know, I get it. There's things to criticize, but there's also things to praise.
I know there are those in Israel who will not agree with this plan and will call for the war to continue indefinitely. Some are even in the government coalition. And they've made it clear they want to occupy Gaza. They want to keep fighting for years. And the hostages are not a priority to them. Well, I've urged the leadership in Israel to stand behind this deal, despite whatever pressure comes. And
well, he's explicitly calling out the war hawks right now, the people who are fighting to make sure this war never stops. He's calling those people out here.
The people of Israel, let me say this. As someone who's had a lifelong commitment to Israel, as the only American president who's ever gone to Israel in a time of war, as someone who just sent the U.S. forces...
I remember Biden tweeted about junk fees in Ticketmaster like a year ago, and now he's going after it. Yep. Yeah, no, when Biden tweets about that stuff, it's a prelude to, like, going after it with a build. Like, there's going to be a headline with Biden goes after yada yada with this and this. Like, he's not hollow talk. He's actually doing stuff, like, constantly, like, every day. There's a new thing that he is doing. If you keep up with the headlines and keep up with this, like, what he's doing. And he's been surprisingly successful at getting a lot of these things passed because he knows how to, like, you know, piece by piece achieve a goal. For a good example is the student debt cancellation. It's like in small multi-billion-dollar chunks he's canceling in waves.
To directly defend Israel when it was attacked by Iran, I ask you to take a step back and think what will happen if this moment is lost. We can't lose this moment. Indefinite war in pursuit of an unidentified notion of total victory will not bring Israel, will only bog down Israel and Gaza, draining the economic, military, and human resources, and furthering Israel's isolation in the world. That will not bring hostages home. That will not bring an enduring defeat of Hamas. That will not bring Israel lasting security. But a comprehensive approach that starts with this deal will bring hostages home and will lead to more secure Israel. And once a ceasefire and hostage deal is concluded, it unlocks the possibility of a great deal more progress, including calm along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. The United States will help forge a diplomatic resolution.
Imagine Biden actually establishes peace in this region, like the most unprecedented political move in like the history of the world, actually successfully brings about like lasting peace in this region, with like a strong, like peace deal and like strong presence over Israel's government. Like, God, could you imagine? That might actually result in a substantial boost for Biden in the polls. Like, I know people are really dumb about, foreign policy, but it would be such a meme that Biden solved the crisis in Israel, Gaza, that, like, people would be like, you gotta give Biden credit for that one. It'd become a meme. It's thought to be impossible. Twitter lefties will still try and find a way to spin it into a negative. They'll call Biden a white savior.
Ensures Israel's security and allows people to safely return to their homes without fear of being attacked. With the deal, a rebuilding of Gaza will begin. Arab nations and the international community, along with Palestinian and Israeli leaders, to get it done in a manner that does not allow Hamas to rearm. And the United States will work with our partners to rebuild homes, schools, and hospitals.
I like that he explicitly says as well that Hamas is not currently in a state in which it can pose a serious threat to Israel, which is the United States outright saying, like in an official statement, Israel, if they continue to fight against Hamas, is fighting an enemy that literally cannot fight back. Like, they're basically, like, they don't have the U.S.'s approval at this point to fight Hamas, is the implication there.
In Gaza.
At least to fight them further.
To help repair communities that were destroyed in the chaos of war. And with this deal, Israel could become more deeply integrated in the region, including, it's no surprise to you all, including potential historic normalization agreement with Saudi Arabia. Israel could be part of a regional security network to counter the threat posed by Iran. All this progress would make Israel more secure, with Israeli families no longer living in the shadow of a terrorist attack. And all this would create the conditions.
I feel like we're in that like portion of a Final Fantasy 14 expansion where everything is going too well, and we're teetering on the edge of like someone coming along and fucking it all up. Like Iran is gonna like launch another attack on Israel or something like tomorrow, like in the early morning, and just completely flip everything upside down. It really feels like world leaders that don't like America, that are on an adversarial grounds with us, love to start up conflict when we have a Democrat in office. Now, Republicans would say something like, oh, that's because they know Democrats are weak. But obviously, we're not stupid. We know that, like, America is objectively in a weaker state with a Republican in power. I mean, look at how COVID, beat the shit out of our country because of a Trump presidency. Us not being prepared for a pandemic because Trump just wasn't... America was weak. America's immune system was weak because of Trump. I wonder if adversarial world leaders kind of deliberately start wars with us or get us kind of entrenched in conflict that we have to get involved in realistically, that they know we have to get involved in realistically when we have a Democrat in office, because they know Republicans in office, bad for America, and they want what's bad for America, and they want to enforce that idea that Democrats are war hawks by basically forcing, like, hell, Trump airstriked multiple nations and they didn't like bother to get mad at us and like start any hostilities after that. Like, Trump got credit for being this like war ender. Meanwhile, he was airstriking people nonstop. They just didn't attack him back. And yet the second Biden takes office, all of a sudden wars are starting everywhere. And all of our adversarial countries are constantly looking to fight. It makes me wonder. Really makes me wonder. I'm not saying there's like a conspiracy of like coordination here. It's just if there was a known understanding that Republicans in power makes America weaker, wouldn't all our enemies do what they could to make it so that the American people want to elect Republicans if they can influence what a president does that Americans won't like, such as getting involved in conflict?
Conditions for a different future, a better future for the Palestinian people, one of self-determination, dignity, security, and freedom. This path is available once the deal is struck. Israel will always have the right to defend itself against the threats to its security and to bring those responsible October 7th to justice. And the United States will always ensure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself. If Hamas fails to fulfill its commitments under the deal, Israel can resume military.
When we talk about Israel, like Israel, we talk about as like a political entity very often. And because of that, we use a lot of negative language and say, Israel bad, Israel shouldn't do this, Israel shouldn't do that, or Israel's wrong in doing this. But we got to remember, we're not also lumping in every last man, woman, and child born and living in Israel with that. There are a lot of people living in Israel. And hell, I've got some fans that live in Israel, believe it or not. I have Israeli fans, at least one of them, was brave enough to announce themselves in chat. And they're not in favor of what's happening. They might have been brought to Israel when they were young, or hell, in some cases even born there. Doesn't mean they're in favor of what's happening, but what they do experience is the bombings. Like, Hamas has been launching rockets at Israel and the populated areas of Israel for decades now. So if you've been an Israeli citizen, you've like lived in Israel, you are hearing boom, 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 boom all the fucking time. And you look up in the middle of the day and there are bombs getting intercepted above your head. And that sounds cool at first. Like, we're Americans and we have like 4th of July. And so like we'd probably have a lot of fun with that for like a little while. But like when you really think about it, that is quite terrifying. The Palestinians have it far worse because the bombs are genuinely falling on them. But many Israeli citizens have lived under the threat of what the Palestinians are currently going through for a very, very long time at the hands of Hamas, backed by their allied nations and regimes and some terror groups as well. So there's a lot to it when it comes to the idea that, yeah, Israel does need to be able to defend those people in their territory who are having rockets volleyed at them. Like that they do need to be defended, right? Xander, all 70 to 80% of Israeli, Gazans, and Palestinians like the USA. Biden and Israel's plan. Nice. Yeah, criticizing Israel shouldn't entail antagonizing Israeli citizens generally. Well, that's not what I even mean. I mean, a general understanding that, like, there are good people in Israel that do not support this war that will fully tell you, but, like, yeah, Hamas is bad. Like, they have almost bombed me my entire life. If it were not for the Iron Dome, one of those missiles would have hit me by now. Like, they're not full of shit. They're not lying, you know? I binge both seasons of From in like 2 days. Thank you. Chad91, I wish you joined the watch party. I only recommend top tier media, okay? Join the watch parties. If I'm watch partying a show, it is top tier and worth being there for. I promise. We're doing a watch party after this stream, by the way. Be there.
Operations, but Egypt and Qatar have assured me, and they are continuing to work to ensure that Hamas doesn't do that. The United States will help ensure that Israel lives up to their obligations as well. That's what this deal says. That's what it says. And we'll do our part. This is truly a decisive moment. Israel has made their proposal. Hamas says it wants a ceasefire. This deal is an opportunity to prove whether they really mean it. Hamas needs to take the deal. For months,
I think they've agreed.
People all over the world have called for a ceasefire. Now it's time.
This is 2 days old, by the way, and so far, no bumps, no speed bumps, no bumps in the road, no potholes, no issues. It seems like it's holding up. Peace may be in reach.
Time to raise your voices and demand that Hamas come to the table, agrees to this deal, and ends this war that they began. Of course, there'll be differences on the specific details that need to be worked out. That's natural. If Hamas comes to negotiate, ready to deal, then Israel negotiations must be given a mandate, the necessary flexibility to close that deal. Past 8 months have marked heartbreaking pain.
So maybe he's using a teleprompter. It's like on a screen in the middle of the crowd that he's looking at, but it honestly doesn't it looks like he's talking off the dome here. It looks like he's just remembered the thing that he is doing and he's just explaining it like in the way I would as a streamer, just like explaining a thing to you guys. Like it seems like that's what he's doing. Biden like actually seems to be hands-on and the like person behind the policies he's pushing, like the good policies he's behind. So it makes sense that he can actually explain what he's doing and why he's doing it. It's not all just like a cabinet making all of these decisions and all these moves for him, and he's just like the puppet. He actually is getting on his knees and doing the work, you know? Getting on his knees and doing the work. God, that phrasing.
Those whose loved ones are slaughtered by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. Hostages and their families waiting in anguish. Ordinary Israelis whose lives were forever marked by the shattering event of Hamas's sexual violence and ruthless brutality.
Yeah, there was quite a few women who were raped by Hamas soldiers on October 7th, and they sexually assaulted and raped a lot of the women that they killed and imprisoned. I know that like there's a lot of people on the left that are saying this didn't happen. I don't know why we have to like defend Hamas or like play like misinfo like games for Hamas in order to like make Israel look bad, because it's not necessary. But no, Hamas is a truly bad organization. They are extremely far right. If you're left wing, you should not be defending them. Just because they're not in America doesn't mean they're not literally the same types of people here who carry around Trump flags and Confederate flags and think that women should be barefoot in the kitchen and only fucking them. It's a lot of the same. It's a lot of the same types of people. It's just different part of the world.
Palestinian people have endured sheer hell in this war. Too many innocent people have been killed, including thousands of children. Far too many have been badly wounded.
I'm curious how the right's going to react to this clip. Oh, conservatives have not paid this any mind because they don't like to give any attention to the fact that Biden is not a warmonger.
We all saw the terrible images from the deadly fire in Rafah earlier this week, following an Israeli strike against targeting Hamas. And even as we work to surge assistance to Gaza, with 1,800 trucks delivering supplies these last 5 days, 1,800, the humanitarian crisis still remains. I know this is a subject on which people in this country feel deep, passionate convictions, and so do I. This has been one of the hardest, most complicated problems in the world.
No, Biden, you're genocide
There's nothing
lover.
easy about this. Nothing easy about it. Through it all, though, the United States has worked relentlessly to support Israeli security, to get humanitarian supplies into Gaza, to get a ceasefire and a hostage deal to bring this war to an end. Yesterday, with this new initiative, we've taken an important step in that direction. I want to level with you today as to where we are and what might be possible.
Nice.
But I need your help. Everyone who wants peace now must raise their voices and let the leaders know they should take this deal, work to make it real, make it lasting.
You know what he's telling people who are protesting for Gaza right now, right? He's telling you, here you go. You have something specifically to protest for. This is going to kind of differentiate for me who are the people that actually care and who are the people that are just, like, virtue signaling. It'll be the difference between the people who are just chanting free Gaza, free Gaza, free Gaza after this, and the people chanting, like, for Israel to agree to this, for Hamas to agree to this, and for the U.S. to continue to back this. Like, that'll be what sets it apart for me. The people who back this. This is the most realistic, actual, tangible way to help the people who have been harmed in Gaza. And if people aren't backing this and talking about this, then as far as I'm concerned, they're just virtue signaling about people who are dying overseas, not actually caring, because this is how you actually care.
Forge a better future out of the tragic terror attack and war. It's time to begin this.
You can cringe at me if you want, Perry Icefire, but I've seen people on Twitter who are obviously just virtue signaling with the Gaza, like, Israel stuff, and that should upset you, that people are, like, weaponizing the deaths of these, like, innocent civilians in Gaza to make themselves look morally good, I guess. Like, that should upset you. Like, a lot of Twitter posters love doing that. It's like a big thing to do on Twitter right now, and I don't like that. It happens with every new thing that is, like, a human rights violation that is getting a lot of attention. Breaking, Ukraine officially recognizes Palestine. I thought that's been a thing, Astronaut Lad. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that has been a thing for a while. I thought, like, Ukraine has, for a while, recognized Palestine.
New stage. For the hostages to come home, for Israel to be secure, for the suffering to stop. It's time for this war to...
You know, the Animaniacs recognize Palestine. In the Countries of the World song, Palestine is in it. What is that, back in, like, the late 80s, early 90s? Pretty based.
End. For the day after to begin. Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Nice. I like Biden. I'm saying it. I'm a proud Biden supporter. In fact, we are going full resistance lib, as I said before. We are resist liberals, and we're wearing our I'm Still With Her shirts. We love Biden. We love the Democratic Party. We vote blue no matter who. Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump for prison. He's going to Pokemon Go to prison. It's going to be very good. Oh my God. OBS just had a stroke. I mean, thankfully this is the last topic I'm doing, but anyway, Pokemon go to prison. Pokemon go to prison, Trump. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider dropping a like. Every single thumbs up, no matter when, where, or what you're watching, boosts my channel and my content and the algorithm out to more people, so I really do appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to follow my social medias linked down below, subscribe and ring the bell icon, comment, and if you want to support me financially, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buying merch through my Streamlabs link down below in the description. And of course, do not forget to join my fan Discord. Every week, at least, I host a watch party, a game event, or a call-in stream in my Discord server. It is poppin' constantly. There's always events happening. And in fact, after this stream, as in like 10 minutes, we're doing a watch party of episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Rings of Power. It's great. It's fantastic. Do not let the right-wing racist bitches tell you otherwise. Everyone I've gotten into it so far is loving it. We had over 50 people in the last watch party. Let's see if we can get even more this time. People are loving it and have been asking me to resume for the last few streams, so I hope you guys are hyped. Go ahead and join the Discord if you haven't already. I'll go ahead and post the link to the Discord. It's also down in the description if you want to join the Discord, like, when watching the video. When this goes out on YouTube as its own thing. But I highly recommend you join the Discord now, because I want to see you guys in that watch party tonight. With all that said, hopefully you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.